Namaskara. I am here to talk to you today about women's empowerment in urban areas. I am going to specifically speak about poverty elevation programs that are being done through the NGO sector, through civil society, which are dovetailed with the government-sponsored schemes. Women, as you all know, form a large part of society. Though women are half of the working population, 95% of them work out of their homes. They are therefore recognized popularly as the unorganized or informal sector. And due to this reason, the goods and services that they produce are unaccounted for. 44% of all women today are illiterate. Therefore, let us first understand, when we say that we want women's empowerment, what do we mean by the term empowerment? Largely, economic empowerment must come first, but this is not all. Women must have access to capital, to livelihood, and choices of their employment, and this is what we mean by economic empowerment. The work that they do must be recognized and paid adequately. However, reality is that today they work more and they earn less than men. Let us understand also what we mean by the informal sector. The informal sector is broadly characterized by units having low productivity, low level of organization, and low income. Labor relations are at best casual, based on kinship and social relations. Mainly, the household sector, with no access to institutional capital or finance, accounts for the informal sector. The informal sector has income inequality as well as income disparity. That is, women are paid less, and even when they are paid a little more, as in some cases, the payment is at best irregular and with a lot of conditions. They have very little access to banking or capital. Only a minority of them get what is called enterprise benefits, that they have access to sick leave, maternity leave, and maternity benefits. Another issue in the informal sector is that the universal state benefits, or what we call the traditional safety nets, are clogged and are in a pecking order. Private financial instruments such as capital access is disproportionately accessed by the higher income groups. Let us now compare the urban and rural areas in terms of working conditions. One thinks that urban areas are better places of work since they have better power, better water access, better roads, better transportation facilities than the rural areas. But actually the reverse is true. Let me tell you why. Because rural areas have an acute power shortage, their hours of work are better. It's always in the daytimes. Also, the hours are shorter. Since there are no roads, people walk only a short distance to places of work or work out of their households or their agricultural fields. Since they work in fields, they have better access to clean air and less pollutants affecting them. Then, the limited transportation facilities ensure that work is found in and around a village. Again, the work is mostly in non-polluting areas because of the lack of water and lack of sanitation. Contrarily, in urban areas, lighting, though continuous, is poor in the informal sector, and it is based in slums, EWS housing, or in industrial sheds. Sanitation, clean air, and water sources are very few and in very dismal conditions. The hours are more given the fact that there is power supply and the transportation availability. Therefore, within the urban-rural divide, there is also a gender disparity, that is, where women work in the rural and urban areas for about the same amount of salary, but the hours of work that they have in urban areas are more given the transportation. In urban areas, women commute more, they wait for longer periods at bus stops and for the transportation, and this is especially true for women rather than for men, because men have access to crowded public transportation which women do not have. In rural areas, women are more likely to be self-employed in households. They also have a bigger share in running the household, including the income use and the income generation. In urban areas, women are more likely to be casual or piece-rated workers. What I mean by this is women are more likely to be working in garment manufacturing factories in Karnataka, in manufacture of small and medium industries, and in smaller plants which have poor and dismal conditions of work. Because of the low incomes and the higher cost of living, Women in urban areas are unable to meet their basic needs of food, clothing and health care. Women are sent out to work in urban areas because a double income is needed, and they are most affected by this because they lose control over work decisions, over income use and even over their children's futures. Let us now look at another phenomenon affecting our discussion, and this is the phenomenon of globalization. Globalization, as all of you know, has emerged as a major force of change in India and specifically in Karnataka because of the IT, the BT and the BPO sectors. Whereas some sections of people have seen rapid growth in both income and employment opportunities in Karnataka, globalization has left others at a grave disadvantage. A common feature of all groups, however, is that in spite of increasing incomes and in spite of increasing job opportunities, there is inequality and insecurity. And though there is a sense of optimism, it is amidst widespread deprivation. So what do we see at the end part of my lecture? One is we see that women are half of the present workforce in society today. Women work mainly in the informal sector. The informal sector working conditions are bad or perhaps worse in urban areas. Globalization has led to change, has led to rapid growth of income, has led to rapid growth of employment opportunity, but it's also led to insecurity and inequality. Amongst the most unequal and insecure groups of people are the women, and amongst women it is the peace-rated home-based workers. 95% of all these people who work in the peace-rated home-based working population are women today. How in these circumstances do we ensure empowerment of women? How do we help them fight for change? How do we ensure that they have got a right to choice, to human rights and to the right to their futures, securing the future of their children, securing the future of their livelihood? How do we ensure that they get equal incomes? How do we ensure that they get more food security? How they get more livelihood security? What enterprise benefits they are entitled to in the traditional safety nets and in the enterprises? How do we ensure that they have a right to choose the workplace? How do we have a right to ensure that they get control over their incomes? And how do we have a right to ensure that they get right to their children's futures? The tools used are training, development and leverage of technology and capacity building. The target is catalyzing income generation at the grassroots level. The training begins with awareness about the basic human rights, followed by awareness about importance of skill building, saving, organizing and collective strength. This is followed by a leadership training program which builds confidence and motivation and lays the base for subsequent skill and capacity building activities. It is very clear to SEWA that unless people have got confidence, unless we increase their self-esteem and self-respect, this kind of program does not work. SEWA perceives skill building and training as an integrated and holistic concern, linking it with self-reliance and poverty elevation. It is part of a larger framework to maximize the effectiveness of individual intervention. Since skill building is directly related to livelihood of poor working women, their families, the community, their neighborhood are of central importance in this scheme. Additionally, SEWA believes that skill building may even build capacities, allowing movement of the women from one profession, which is a traditional profession, to another without losing their social status. Essentially, what is required is the freedom to grow, to choose a career and to develop it. Therefore, instead of focusing on a paradigm shift from training for employment, SEWA concentrates on training for empowerment, which is closely linked to the notion of decent work and self-sufficiency. It involves, therefore, continuous hand-holding on a number of issues, on the issue of credit access, on the issue of market linkages, accessing information, microfinance, placement opportunities, even health and nutrition benefits, even education opportunities for the family. The core of the program is large-scale capacity building in the following areas. Remember, these are capacity building programs which are today relevant in Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh, and therefore each of you can think of capacity building programs relevant to Karnataka. The program today covers textiles and garmenting, agro and food processing, agriculture, nursery raising, construction, information and communication technology, building and managing micro enterprises, salt production, paramedical training, para-veterinary training, renewable energy, vegetable vending operations, managing a bank, a health insurance scheme, etc. Maybe all of you can think of different relevant programs which are of interest and of capacity for the women of Karnataka, which may be different. I am going to tell you now some real life case studies which show how this program has changed the women of Gujarat. The case studies cover financial support, they cover social security measures, they cover health insurance, they cover change of status of the women, and they cover how women move from being just women to becoming leaders.
Case 1. Financial support. Nanuben and her husband came to Ahmedabad city from a village in Mehsana district, as the wages earned by picking fruits in the orchards was meager and uncertain. Nanuben learned the trade of old clothes vendor from her aunt, who also brought her to open an account in Seva Bank. At first, Nanuben worked along with her aunt, saving the most of her earned money. She then took a loan of Rs 500 and began to work on her own. She and her family prospered, and over the last 23 years, she has taken 31 loans for capital, for a house, and for a workshop, and for marrying her children. I came to Ahmedabad with Rs 7 in my pocket, and now I am worth Rs 7 lakhs, she says. I became a director in the board of Seva Bank, and have earned both money and respect. I now sit in a chair if I go to visit someone, instead of sitting on the ground, and I am addressed as Nanuben rather than just Nanu. Case study 2. Health insurance support. Reva Ben Ganapati Bai is a Seva member in Gujarat. Reva Ben and her husband are casual laborers. When Vimo Seva leaders used to ask her to invest in insurance, she would refuse. After several education sessions on insurance, Reva Ben bought a policy for herself and her husband without his knowledge. Later that year, her family decided to go on a religious pilgrimage to Somnath, a famous temple in Gujarat. In the middle of an enjoyable bus ride, while they were singing songs and laughing, their bus suddenly met with an accident. Reva Ben fell unconscious and her husband was seriously injured. Someone called Gujarat's emergency ambulance 108, and Reva Ben and her husband were taken to the hospital. Luckily, they both survived. When she gained consciousness, Reva Ben told her husband about her investment in Vimo Seva Insurance. They contacted their local Vimo Seva leader and were reimbursed for their high hospital expenses for which they would have normally gone into debt. Reva Ben and her husband were very grateful to God for saving their lives and to Vimo Seva for helping them avert a financial crisis. Case study 3. Skill support. Rakhi Ben Govindbai Mahavir is an incense roller in Ahmedabad's Bapu Nagar area. She is 40 years old and has only attended primary school. After she became a Seva member, she opened a bank account, took worker education classes, and eventually became a Seva leader, Agewan. She organized 200 women rollers in her area and later was elected as the representative to the Incense Rollers Occupational Committee in Seva. Many Seva members were rolling incense sticks for a local ashram, religious organization. When Seva approached them for a wage increase, the ashram responded by stopping the work, and 1,000 women lost employment. After a long struggle, Seva went to the labor court and the ashram agreed to negotiations. After that, wages steadily rose every year. But Seva members realized that there is a risk of work completely shifting to another state. Raki Ben says that her continued struggle for rights had resulted in greater respect and recognition of incense rollers as workers. As part of Seva's committee, she has raised the issue of social security of incense rollers who face many occupational health hazards, inhalation of chemicals, breathing problems, and joint pains, amongst others. Due to continuous pressure from the workers, a welfare board for incense rollers was established in Gujarat. The board registered workers, issued identity cards, and provides medical benefits as well as skills training. Case Study 4: Social Support. Sharifa Ben Fateh Muhammad Rangrej, a mother of 6 children, became a widow when her eldest son was only 10 years old. Women in her community did not work outside the house, and after her husband's death, she depended on relatives for support. But soon, health declined and her children had to go out and beg neighbors for food. So picking up courage and defying her relatives' strictures, she went out to a catering firm for washing dishes. She earned a daily wage and was given leftover food which helped feed the family. Often she worked 2 shifts and a variety of jobs until she got a job in a dyeing and printing factory. At first, she made many mistakes, and the owner's wife used to beat her, but she persisted, became skilled, and began earning well. In the 2002 riots, the factory was burned to the ground, and during the riots, she and her children stayed home, too afraid to go out and look for work. A Seva leader came to her house with food grains every day, and in order to occupy her mind, she began to help Seva to distribute the food grains in her neighborhood. She helped Seva to bring the women in her area together and organized meetings between Hindu and Muslim women to end the violence and build peace. And when Seva started a Shanti Path center, she volunteered to run it. She is running this center from 8 years and helps women in other areas to join Seva. She says, "I have seen many sorrows in my life and want to help other women who are suffering the same way." Case Study 5. Geeta Ben, Vittalbai Petwa, came from a family of carpenters and they were doing quite well. Geeta Ben's 3 sons and 1 daughter grew up and got married. After her husband died, she began living with her son whom she loved very much. She had some money of her own and was also earning from the carpentry business, and the house was also in her name. Geeta Ben's sons began asking for money. First, it was small amounts and later larger ones. One day, he confessed that he had taken a large loan and had lost all his money, and he owed rupees 14 lakhs. Geeta Ben sold her house and paid off his loan. She had to start working making embroidery pieces, and still her son would take money from her and she would give it out of love for him. She got poorer and poorer and estranged from her other children. One day, a seva worker came to her area and persuaded her to come for a meeting. Suddenly, a new world opened for her. She began going to all seva meetings. She took leadership training and became a leader in her area. And she began composing songs about the strength in a union. Now, she realized that she was being exploited by her own son and told him to leave her house. She was able to save some of the money she earned and became more stable financially. She also became closer to her other children and their families, but prefers to live alone. She spends all her spare time in working for Seva. Before I joined Seva, I felt I did not want to live anymore. Today, I'm not afraid of anything or anyone, and I want to spend my time showing other women like myself how to come out of fear. Seva is like an ocean of love for us.